Sorry.
No, the other one. Yeah, try that. They're both PowerPoints. One's just an older version of the other in case you have an old version. Let me know when you're ready, Ken.
It's recording.
Okay. Just leave it right there. I know where the standing point is now.
Okay.
No. All right, guys, are you seeing the PowerPoint up there?
Yes, I
I'm
am.
seeing the notes. I don't know
So
why.
that's because that's the way PowerPoint's.
Oh,
displayed.
okay.
Okay.
Good.
That's fine. What the audience is seeing is this. That's
Oh,
the
good.
presenter screen.
Okay.
We're seeing the
At home, are you
presenter
seeing the
version.
PowerPoint?
We see the presenter version,
What
not the
again?
screen
Oh, I'm
version.
sorry. At home, are you seeing the PowerPoint?
We're seeing the presenter version, not the screen version.
Hold on. Hang on.
Thanks.
That's it.
Excellent.
Why are we seeing the not that it matters, it's not gonna bother me, as long as the home guys are seeing the right one.
Yeah, we see the right one, Ed.
How many people are in the planetarium?
Right, Ken? Yep. All right, good evening, everyone. All right, what we're gonna do tonight is talk about the thing that happens to us as people who are involved in astronomy, friends, neighbors, people coming in new to the club. They go, oh, wow, this sounds wonderful. What should I buy? I should buy Ken a seat so he can sit. And so we're going to talk about this now. The way we're going to approach this is I'm going to go through what I do. Now, this is not the right way or the wrong way. This is just what I do. Once I finish going through my piece, I want to open it up because I want to hear what you do, which might be very different. And I can learn a lot from that, and so can everybody else. For the people who are new, who are asking this question, what should I buy? You'll kind of get a feel for what the thinking is. In other words, what are the things to consider when you're buying your first telescope? You know, what are the critical items? You know, what should you focus on? You might be surprised by some of the things that I'm going to bring up. A lot of people are, because I'm always causing problems. And what do you do? All right, it doesn't really matter. All right, next slide. All right, so when someone comes to me and says, I want to buy a telescope, what should I get? Here's what I'm trying to do. I want to understand their motivations. Are they passionately interested? Does a friend have a telescope? Gee, I'm bored, I got nothing else to do, maybe I'll buy a telescope. I want to understand their expectations. When they get this telescope out and they start looking through it, what are they expecting? Understand their challenges and limitations. We'll get into that a little bit more. Identify what I believe to be the shortest path to success for them based on their definition of success. And to me, that's the most critical one. I've come from other hobbies, and path is put through and the newbie tries it and they get frustrated and I'll go find another hobby. And so my goal is to get them hooked. You know, I'm going to give them that little nickel bag, and once they try that, they're going to come back for more. I want them to be successful, but I need to understand what success means to them, not to me. Right? Yeah, let's go back. Let's go back. The last line is the combination of it. If getting started is too challenging, it's unlikely that they will stay engaged. And so that's what I'm thinking about. Okay, now you can turn. All right. What do I think they want from me? They're coming to me. I'm the expert. I'm the experienced guy. I'm the person who knows. This is what I think they want. They want a clear, reliable answer. They want confidence that they're going to make the right decision. fulfillment of their expectation of what a telescope will show them, some help in learning to use the equipment, the ultimate tool at the lowest price that will give them that wow experience, and an assurance of success. Okay, next slide. So here's the questions I ask. This is what I want to know. What they expect. The budget. How much do they have to spend? I've had people come up and say, oh, I want to buy a really good telescope, a really good telescope. Okay, I got about $120. What can I get for that? Now, we all laugh because we know. The fact of the matter is this guy has no idea what a good telescope costs. So could we stretch that a little bit? Or I may look at them and say, look, for 120 bucks, yes, I can get you a telescope, but I don't think it's going to satisfy what you're expecting. But let's talk about it. Are they thinking about visual? What we refer to as EAA, electronically assisted astronomy, or astrophotography? I've had people come, again, starting off saying, I got $200 to spend and I have a 75-pound DSLR that I want to hang on the end of this scope so I can take Hubble pictures. Okay, we're going to have a problem here. All right, we'll talk about it. Another one is when I get a request from people for, I want to get a telescope for my son or my daughter. Right? Is it for them or is it for you to use with them? I was on a discussion on cloudy nights the other day, and the guy wanted to buy a telescope for his 5-year-old. And I had to ask him, I said, do you want something you're going to hand the 5-year-old and say goodbye? Or you want something that you're going to use with them, which means it's really for you. Okay, and he was kind of perplexed. He didn't even really know. Where will they store it? Where will they use it? And how will they move it? We were having a little discussion earlier about this. Again, I was involved in a cloudy nights discussion, the astronomy forum. And guy gets on, he goes, I got about $500 and I'd like to get a telescope. What should I get? I joined the conversation about 18 posts in. For those who know cloudy nights, you understand what I'm talking about. Buy a dog, buy a dog. If you don't buy a dog, your children will be sterile. Okay? And so I get on there and so who's going to use it? Where are you going to store it? Where are you going to use it? How are you going to move it? I'm 19 years old. I'm a sophomore in college. I'm in a 3rd floor walk-up dorm room. Oh yeah, 8-inch stop. That's right up your alley. That's exactly the scope you should be getting. No one had asked. Not a single person asked what this person's situation was. All right. How committed are they to learning what needs to be learned? Do you have any idea what it takes to use a telescope? To find things in the sky? Let's talk about that. Now, when I ask these questions, I'm really trying to open up a conversation.
What I would add to that is how much free time do you have?
Say it again.
I would add to that how much free time do you have?
Good point. And now I can't see my slides and the audience can't see me.
Oh, you can't see the slides. Okay,
I'm watching the slides on there.
I'm sorry.
Pardon me, I had a raider come in here and completely wreck the infrastructure for the presentation. But we'll be back in a moment.
Okay. 2 members don't have the new login and they desperately wanted to see this, and that's why I took it to try and send it. But
Okay.
Well,
Did you do it? Did you send it?
I didn't. 'Cause
Okay, we'll go send it.
Okay.
All right, sorry about that. All right, now I got everyone in the back. All right. So, how committed are they to learning? How comfortable are they with computers or smartphones? Obviously, some of these new telescopes are based on computers. Some are using smartphones. If you can't follow 10 steps in a row in order every time, a go-to scope will lead you to suicide. Okay. If you can't download an app onto a smartphone and pick a few things off a menu, some of these scopes will drive you crazy. However, If you can't drive your car anyplace without a GPS, star hopping is probably not going to be your favorite activity. So I'm trying to vet this person as to what their expectations are, what their time is, what their experience is. Because if I give them the wrong scope, A, they're not gonna have a good time. B, they're gonna blame me. Okay, my house will be partying. What support do they have other than my advice? This is really important. Because no matter how smart you are, how capable you are, you're gonna need help. Now, for me, I joined this club. I got a lot of help here. I also am a voracious user of cloudy nights. And I would say more than 50% of what I know about the astronomy hobby, I learned on cloudy nights. Because 3 o'clock in the morning wasn't going to call Ken and say, hey, Ken, what's that fellow at? So I would post the classic stupid questions on cloudy nights. I go back to bed. Okay. Get up at 8 o'clock in the morning, there's 37 responses. And in 15 minutes, I don't know what a LRAD is, where to buy them, how to use them, how they match up with the charts, who invented it, how I can modify it. Ooh, cool. For those of you who are, everybody here a member of Cloudy Nights? Who's anybody here not a member of Cloudy Nights? Okay, everybody.
Here you go.
You're not? Okay. It's a fantastic resource. So what support do they have? Do they have a friend who's in the hobby? Do they know somebody, or do they expect me to teach them? And I don't mind that, but if they're out in South Setauket and I'm in Syosset, this could be a little inconvenient. But I have supported people via email, via phone, but there's no substitute for being there with them. Let's have the next slide. Stuck one.
It gets done on Dave's computer.
Yeah,
right now.
he's working on it, right? I'm just looking to see if it turns and it's just not showing up here. Hold on a second, folks, we're gonna turn this. Ah, all right. Here's the big one. Yeah, I got $100. I want to buy a telescope so I can see this. Okay. Oh, it's a good one. You'll love it. All right. So this is the person's expectations. Dave, give me the next slide. This is what I saw on my $300 go-to 80mm refractor. Where's Andromeda Galaxy? Everybody tells me this is a naked eye target. I can certainly see it in binoculars. In an 80mm telescope, how could I not see it? I tell people I cannot see the Andromeda Galaxy from where I live. Now, the Andromeda Galaxy is in that picture. Okay, believe it or not. Next slide. So I go out and I get the 8-inch Dob. Buy a Dob. And this is what I see. And that's me on the right. All right, next slide. Well, I was enticed out to Cherry Springs by a very good friend who got me out there and helped set me up. And I had just bought a 12-inch Dob. And now I learned the value of dark skies. Holy crap. It still isn't what I hoped to see in my 80mm, that first picture. But now I knew what to expect. And when I saw this, I loved it. It took my breath away. Now I'm beginning to understand about light pollution, what it really means. So that's another question I ask people about is, what's your light pollution situation like? I don't know. So now I've got to help them through that. Next one. How are they going to find their targets? So again, I'm trying to understand their light pollution. Do you live in Manhattan or do you live on the east end of Long Island? Okay. Do you love the hunt? Is half the fun getting someplace, finding your way? Do you still enjoy paper maps? All right. Or you get in your car and program the GPS to go to the supermarket. All right. let's face it, especially for those who are, say, under the age of 40, the GPSs have been around probably as long as you've been driving. Okay, I gave my daughter a paper map with the highlights of how to get to and from college. Okay, now my daughter's 40 years old, so this is not yesterday. All right, the first thing she did was put it in the trunk of the car and call me when she made a wrong turn. Okay, guess what we got her next? GPS. There's also methods that we can use for finding via coordinates, altitude, azimuth, right ascension, declination. Talk to them about these things, helping to, again, clarify their needs, as opposed to buy this piece of iron. So now we're getting to the actual telescopes. And there are so many options, all kinds of tubes, mounts, coordinate systems, pieces or packages, budget, accessories. I have to buy accessories? I mean, when I buy the telescope, I got to buy more stuff? Yes, I'm afraid you do. Next. So one of the first things I try to impress on somebody who's getting into this is that this telescope or this device that you're going to buy, let's call it a device, is not likely to be the last thing you buy. So making this decision is not a life and death decision. Okay, and people sweat over this. Oh, if I make a mistake, it'll ruin me. No, if you stay in the hobby, and I always emphasize this, if you stay in the hobby, you're likely to have binoculars. At some point, you'll have some kind of a grab and go scope, a smaller, lighter scope, and a light bucket. Something big, whatever big means. All right? And you can start anywhere. Because after you've been successful with wherever you started, you know what the next two steps are. All right? I started with 10 by 50 binoculars that I paid $25 for at Harbor Freight. I bought a $16 planisphere. I laid out on my lounge chair for like 2 months, and I went, this is cool. Okay, I need to get a telescope. But I was hooked. I was committed. Could just as easily have bought the telescope first. But frankly, I knew a little bit more about what I wanted to do now that I had played with the binoculars. Or you have those people who really want to go for the big one. They've got a place to put it. They know, they understand about moving it around. That's fine too. Somewhere along the line, they'll buy something smaller and more portable to take on family vacations. All right, next slide. So what are Ed's typical recommendations? This is it's not my toolbox, but that's pretty much what it looks like. I used to do a lot of work on cars. All right. So binoculars. I encourage everyone to get binoculars. Even if you're going to buy a telescope, I encourage people to get binoculars. They don't have to be expensive. It's a great start for kids. If there's kids involved in the conversation, there are $18 6x21 kids binoculars on Amazon for $20. BAK4 prisms, glass lenses. And I've read some of the reviews by people who are within astronomy. I said, you know what? These are surprisingly good. All right. Well, now dad gets the $25 10 by 50s. The kid gets these. They go out, they look at the stars. Is the kid interested? Do they care? Or are they getting really turned on? Plus, they can take it for birding and whatever. So this is the first step. They'll team well with a future telescope. As those of you who go out with me know, when I go out, take my telescope out someplace, like we're going out to Robert Moses, the first thing that comes out is the binoculars. Okay, I use that to judge transparency. If I'm going to star hop, which I'm not a big star hopper, but if I'm going to star hop, I'll star hop with the binoculars first. If I can't see the guide stars in the binoculars, I'm not going to be able to see them in my scope, in my finder scope. And the activities can be used for daytime. So if you decide astronomy is not for you, no big loss. All right. Larger sounds better, but they can be difficult to hold. So these are the sizes I typically recommend. Okay, next slide. Telescopes. This is the grab and go category. And I put a budget range here of about $150 to $600. Obviously, we have scopes that are thousands. But again, not a whole lot of people show up with me and say, I got $1,500 to buy my first telescope. What should I get? Believe me, we won't have any problem spending your money. Now, I'm not going to go through each one of these. I'm going to really go through them as sort of by category. So the first three are the Celestron Star Sense Explorer series. And for the most part today, these are my default recommendations. In terms of a smaller scope, they also have two Dobbs, an 8-inch and a 10-inch. And the Star Sense Explorer application is just miraculous. This is a self-aligning push-to system that runs on your smartphone. Several people in the club have them. I've used them, and they're great. For finding targets, this is the best. I had, what's his name, who runs Camera Concepts?
Jeff.
Jeff. I did a presentation out at Custer on buying your first telescope, and I asked Jeff to come out and join me. And he brought out the EX102AZ, and he told a little anecdotal story, and I believe this to be true. He said his daughter was having her 16th. She was either going to a sweet 16 or she was having a sweet 16. I forget which it was. And he brought the scope with him, set it up as it got dark, put the phone on it, get it all set up, and he said, oh, let me show you a couple of things in the sky. After the second one, the kids pushed him out of the way, and for the next 3 hours, they were running all kinds of things in the sky and just finding to have a ball. 16-year-old girls who had never looked through a telescope. That's how easy this thing is to use. For reference here, there's the DX series refers to the mount that these are on, these three scopes. There's an LT series. Ken's actually going to talk about one of the LT scopes. The scope is good. The mounts are a bit shaky. So it's kind of like your classic low end. The optics are pretty good, but the mounts are not. So I don't typically recommend them. Skywatcher Virtuoso 130p or 150p, these are go-to tabletop Newtonians. And they are a great value. I've been reading some very good reports on them. XT6 manual Dob. For some people, this is a grab and go scope. For other people, this is not. But I have it in the list. The Z130 is a tabletop. The Star Blast is a tabletop. If they are on really limited budgets, as you'll see, I have tight budgets marked there. Those bottom four might be what I would recommend. Now, I'm not limited to these. There's lots of other good options out there, but these would be my starting points. Dave? Light buckets. All right.
What do you do? There's a dollar.
You can't beat the Dobsonian for price performance. The first one are the Star Sense Explorer. So this is the same Star Sense smartphone app on an 8 or 10-inch Dob. The Apertura, Zoomel, Orion are all the same scope. They're actually made by GSO, 8, 10, and 12. I happen to own the 12. That's a manual one. And I showed them how to set this up to be used with altitude and azimuth coordinates. Skywatcher 8, 10, 12 collapsible. You want to put something in your car. You got a small car. You want to try and get it in with other things. This might be a good choice. Explore Scientific Trust Dob. Again, if you're trying to deal with space. Skywatcher has a nice set of 8, 10, and 12-inch go-to Dobs. So if go-to is the thing to go with, they fit. And of course, the Celestron, a Nexstar 8 SE, or the Nexstar Evolution 8. These are all good scopes to consider in this category. Obviously, there's bigger. One of the lessons I learned before I bought my first scope, I learned in this club at an observing night, a public observing night one time. And I honestly, it might be somebody in the room. I was talking to somebody who had this big Celestron, something, a CPC 11 maybe. And I looked at it and I said, wow, that must give you fantastic views. He goes, oh, it's unbelievable how good this is. I said, do you use it often? He goes, once or twice a year.
Yeah.
Why is that? Because I can't pick it up. I can only use it when my son comes to visit. Oh, so you're, oh, no, I have a 6 SE that I use, 3-4 times a week. Ah, okay. Don't buy a scope that's too big. So this was me before I bought anything. I'm going, don't buy anything too big. So these are sort of my starting points on the light buttons. Now, it never fails that people want to talk about astrophotography, and I try to draw a distinction between astrophotography and taking snapshots. If you're talking about holding your phone up to the eyepiece and shooting a picture, that's not astrophotography. If you're talking about, I've got this great DSLR and I want to put it on and I want to take shots that look like Hubble, okay, you've got a few $1,000s you want to put down to get started. And so, but I have to gauge it, because if they're expecting to see Hubble-like stuff, and they're not going to see that on a $200 scope through the eyepiece, they're not going to see that on a $2,000 visual scope on the eyepiece. We have this other platform called EAA. Some of the people in the club know about this, some don't, where we put a camera in the scope and we run it through some software on the computer, and it takes multiple shots and stacks them up. And so we start to approach what an astrophotographer would produce. The difference between the two, there's no strict definition. The difference between the two is EAA is pretty much here and now. I'm at the scope, I'm looking at a screen, I want to see what the scope sees, and I want to watch it improve over time. Astrophotography, as we see when we read on the mailing list, is I was out on the East End and I got 3 hours worth of data. Okay, 2 weeks ago. And now I've been working it, massaging it. Here's my picture. They're beautiful. They're great. Okay, but that wasn't about looking at it at the scope at the time while you were viewing. That was about producing a picture. So, which do you want to do? EAA can be a logical extension of a visual scope setup, but if someone wants to do that, then I'm almost certainly going to push it to a go-to scope, because they're going to need tracking. The last one here is a new category that I've just become aware of, I've just gotten involved in, called smart scopes. And, I'm kind of toying with, can this be a first scope? And I'll show a little bit more on these. But these are basically automated, fully integrated EAA/AP systems. Turn them on, put them on the mount, they self-align. Actually, go to the next slide. I wanted to put just a little bit up about this, because if you're not familiar with these and you are talking to people about what should your first scope be, or even what should your second scope be, these might come into play. So I want to make sure people know about them. There's 5 of them out on the market right now. Dwarf Lab, Unistellar makes 2, and Vanis makes 2. After I did all the investigation, I went and ordered the Dwarf Lab for myself. All right, let's slide it off again. And these have only been around for a few years. Next slide. I'm sorry, go back. Okay, I thought I had another slide there now. So these might be something that you might want to know about, because if you've got something who says they really want to get into astrophotography, but you don't think there's someone who's really going to go buy a $1,500 equatorial mount, $1,000 APO refractor, and have all the trimmings to go with it, and then spend hours learning how to use software. I don't really think this guy's going to do this. Maybe one of these makes sense. Now, $2,500 is not cheap, but it might be cheaper than getting into a full AP setup. Right? And these are literally automated. All right, David, you can flip it now. So, summary. We're at the summary already. I'm more focused on the person than the scope. What path's going to lead to that quickest success? What do they expect to see? Big is bad if they can't, won't use it. Small can be good if they know that a future upgrade is normal. Doesn't represent, oh, I bought the wrong scope. It means I'm ready for the next scope. Do they relish the hunt as much as the find? How will they find things in the sky? Can they deal with computers and smartphones? Try to match the right set of tools to each individual, and who's going to help them develop their skills. So that's it. That's what I had to present. That's what I wanted to talk about. And what I want to do, first of all, we'll open this to any questions. Or if you wish, I'd love to hear from other people what their approach might be. You know, how do you approach this when someone says, I want to buy a telescope, what should I get? So the floor is open.
Let's take this off, and so we can see everybody at home if they want to ask a question.
Yeah, that's good. All right, anybody here want to offer some thoughts? Okay, hold on.
What are the mistakes you think you made when you started out?
Mistakes I made when I started out. I think the biggest mistake was my expectation. What was I going to see? Because I was absolutely disappointed. I knew, from talking to people here, and I knew from going on cloudy nights, that I was in a severely light polluted area. Seeing beautiful galaxies and nebula was going to be tough because I was going to have trouble finding them. If you come to my house and you step outside with me to my observing area, my southern sky has almost no stars in it. My western sky, unless you're talking about Capella, has no stars in it. All right? So my observing has to be northeast to southeast. And even then, I don't have much. I did a count one night. I could see 130 stars from the north-south line going down to the east horizon. No moon, absolutely clear night, 130 stars. That's it. If I did that out of Cherry Springs, it would be what, 3,000? Yeah. All right. So I bought a go-to scope. It was an 80 millimeter, okay, because I wasn't ready to invest big money. And thank goodness I did, because I couldn't have found anything. I would have given up in a flash, because I wasn't, the hunt was not as much fun as the find for me. I wanted to go see stuff. I'm a tourist. I tell people I'm an astronomy hobby tourist. Okay, I am not a deep astronomer. And so having that go-to scope, say, oh wow, look over there in that blank sky where there's nothing there. There's a star cluster that really looks great, but there's nothing in the sky over there. So for me, but getting the go-to was right, but my expectation was that first picture, that galaxy look. When I took that 80 millimeter refractor and pointed, that's what I was expecting to see. Anybody else?
Joel has his hand raised.
Joel, go ahead.
Okay, I've a few comments about this. Having been in that situation of being asked by a rank beginner as to what to do, I agree with a lot of your points, but I've always said start with the binoculars for many of the points that you've made on it, okay? But I've also found that one of the things that is very important that really made the big difference when I first started out is how to learn. And I always recommend go to a meeting of an astronomy club. And that's where you're going to learn. And not only that, when you want to go beyond binoculars, or even if you do want to start out beyond binoculars, you get an opportunity to see what other people are doing, look through their telescopes, or see what it actually takes to do astrophotography. Now, I'm an old fuddy-duddy. I'm a pure visual observer. The only time I ever get an image out of a telescope is if I put a camera, a DSLR on it, or the new, mirrorless cameras, to do an eclipse. And so, I mean, it's astrophotography for me, but but to do the kind of astrophotography that several members of the club like Steve Bellavia do is a very steep learning curve and a very expensive learning curve. So I never tell a beginner to go in that direction. But I think the key thing is to get them to go among a group of people who know what they're doing, have different kinds of equipment, so they can get exposed, so they can get an idea what they want to do. And they'll have an idea what it really means to be in this hobby in all the things that you listed, how much time they have, what they can lug around, how much money they want to spend, how much time. And I find that most people have no idea what the two words light pollution means. So, so I think one of the most important step is either start with the binoculars but I would say get into an astronomy club or any other group of people, go to a star party, anything where people have the telescopes out and see what they're doing, see what you like, get an idea of what you can do, what you can't do, what you can see. I think that's the most important starting point.
Thanks, Joe. Anybody else have a comment, input? Just to speak out, because I can't see hands or anything. Okay, we have a quiet group here. Or maybe we just don't have a lot of people who want to do it. Oh, Steve.
I agree with what Joe was saying. I think one of the things that we do is when we have our outreach programs, I find that little kids come up and they're looking through, they don't know what to expect. So when you show them Jupiter and you show them Saturn, and you show them the Pleiades, and you show them the Orion Nebula, which you can see with even a low visual scope, I think that's what gets them interested. When they can find the easy targets, that'll lead them on to, so let's find something a little more difficult. I think that's probably how you're gonna get it.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody else? All right, well, that's,
Yeah, wait, I have my hand raised here.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, two things. First, in many cases, I tell people, don't buy anything. Go to your club, use everybody else's telescope. Go to a number of star parties, maybe with more than one club. Use other people's telescope for free, right? Try before you buy. Have a good idea of what it's going to look like through the telescope you may own before you own it. Costs you nothing except for some time, and you get the benefit of all the experience of the members at the star parties, all of whom will have opinions. And that's a good thing. One thing that wasn't mentioned, or maybe it was mentioned and I'm half asleep because I'm jet lagged, is you don't have to buy new equipment. And you mentioned, Ed, Cloudy Nights. Cloudy Nights has its classified section. There's also AstroMart. And today, there's eBay and Facebook Marketplace and 38 other places to find used telescopes. And there's no shortage of used equipment. I'd say it's the opposite. There's probably too much used equipment. And so why spend, $200 for a new, fancy eyepiece when you can probably find the same thing used for $30. And the beautiful thing about glass is it doesn't go bad. All right, maybe not $30, but certainly half price, right? You should never, if you're buying it used, you should never pay more than half of retail. Unless something's been damaged, you generally get something that's going to be pretty much as good as when it was new. And usually somebody's upgrading. There was nothing really wrong with what they're getting rid of. They just want, a bigger honking telescope or, some fancier eyepiece or something like that. So I think for beginners, they overlook the fact that they can actually get into the hobby on the cheap and not necessarily give up quality if they're willing to go with used equipment. But that typically takes some advice from club members. So the two comments I have sort of go hand in hand. Thanks.
Actually, that's a real good point. You know, usually when I'm working with new people, I'm always talking about new. Unless we come across a used one that I can take a look at for them. But what I've seen is most people who own telescopes either take very good care of it, or it's been sitting in the corner of the room for 5 years. It's got a little dust on it. But other than that, it's fine. I've helped quite a few people who said, "Oh, you're talking about telescopes. Oh, I have this telescope that I bought for my son when he was 14, and he was interested for about a week. And now it's been sitting in the corner of the den. I'd like to use it. Could you help me?" And we go take a look at it, and they got 1/2 inch of dust off the outside, but if the dust covers are on it, generally these things are in pretty good shape. And likewise, my second scope was used. Okay, I bought a XT18 telescope, and pretty much it was in perfect condition. And from what I've heard talking to other people, you can buy used with a relatively good level of confidence. I'm not real eager to buy telescopes used remotely, because you really don't know what you're getting. Eyepieces, maybe a little more than that, although I tend to buy my stuff again. But I don't generally recommend buying used telescopes unless you can see them. Okay, I'm not disagreeing with you, Bart. I'm simply saying that, you know, buyer beware. And I can't protect you if the scope is in Virginia.
Dave.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I don't think it's been mentioned yet, that if you don't own a telescope, today you can easily borrow them from libraries. There's a telescope library program, so you can borrow a telescope for free, try it out, see if you like it, see if you're into this stuff. So a library is a wonderful resource. The other thing too is the star sense is an absolute game changer. You know, this is something that just came about over the last couple of years. Prior to that, I would recommend to most people, especially living in light polluted skies, to get a good grab and go setup. So like a Twilight 1 mount, which is a wonderful mount. And then you can attach any kind of telescope to that mount that you want. Typically, people are interested in looking at the moon, Saturn, Jupiter. Those are the big wow objects, typically for most people. So I would recommend a telescope to be a long focal length or even a Matsutov telescope, and then take it from there. And I agree with you, Ed, and I think others agree too, that binoculars are always useful. So, you know, add that to your collection. That's all.
Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Shocking. Just to follow up what you're saying on star sense, what I find important, I think borrowing from the library sounds like a good idea, but when you get home and you're all by yourself, what are you gonna do with it? With the star sense, not only can you find the thing, but there's a little button on a lot of the objects that gives you a little audio tour of what you're looking at. So it's like having an astronomer with you. So I find that I do it myself, even though I know what I'm looking at. It's just nice to have company. And I hit the button and I listen to it.
Yeah, true. And I forgot to add one other thing, just it slipped my mind, but I remember it now since you mentioned that. A lot of people don't realize how important it is to align the finder scope with the main scope. So that's like step one. People say, I have the scope, I'm looking at it, I don't see anything. Well, my first question is, have you learned how to use your finder scope? You know, that little mini telescope that's mounted on the main one? They need to be lined up. And a lot of people overlook that, or they don't take it into consideration. Oh, and another thing that I recommend for any scope is either a Rigel or a Telrad that will help them get to that region of the sky that they're looking for. So in addition to having your finder scope aligned with the main scope, you should have a Rigel or a Telrad aligned with the whole system as well.
Couple of good points. Thank you very much. Let me bring one other point up, and it's we haven't really touched on it. We have manual scopes. Okay, manual scopes can be used for star hopping, or as many people in this club know, you can also use coordinates to help find things in the sky with a manual scope. Push-to scopes, some sort of computer assist, whether it's your smartphone or encoders, whatever, like the telescope that I had. One of the benefits of these push-to systems is that you can also use them completely manually. So for me, the XT8 telescope, that's exactly how that worked. I went from a go-to scope to a push-to scope to not turning on the telescope and trying my hand at star hopping, and then learning how to use out as coordinates to find my targets. I did that all on the XT8I. All right. One of the things I like about the StarSense systems, you don't have to use the StarSense app. You can use these scopes completely manually. In any case, any other additions of what we want to tell people who come to us and say, what should I buy? Anything I presented?
Yeah, if I can add one or two more things. So I think it was Dave that mentioned the library loaner programs. In conjunction with the StarSense, the Amateur Astronomers Association has placed 5 telescopes, all with the StarSense system. I think it's the 4-inch version refractors, with the Brooklyn Public Library. And before the program got started, they had a 3-month waiting list before we even had the telescopes in place. We're waiting for the last year's data, but my understanding is that it's been a smashing success and that the StarSense has been pretty easy to use. We haven't heard any complaints. But in addition to that, I know with AAA, we have a loaner program. If you're a member of the club, we've got 30 telescopes you can borrow for no cost to try out. So that's sort of in addition to going to star parties. You can decide what you want to borrow and try it out for a while. And in some cases you find out, yeah, this thing's just too big for me. We've had some come back very quickly where the people realized that it's beyond their weight capacity or their apartment balcony here in the city or whatever it is. So there are the various trial methods, I think are probably the best first advice. Yeah, we want to help you buy something, but before that, we want to help you try something. And so I can't emphasize enough, try before you buy. Thanks.
That's a real good point. And on that library program, I'm in Syosset. Syosset Library brought in 2 of these scopes, tabletop, 114 millimeter star blast. Gee whiz, let's see what this thing is like. So I signed up. 15 months later, I get a call from the library that my scope is available to be taken. 15 months. Okay, that's how much the demand was. They've since brought in a 3rd scope. All right, and these things are booked out all the time.
How long could you borrow it for?
1 week.
Oh.
So I just wanted to try it out. I got it out one night, stood it up, took a look through how it's set up. Because of the way it's put together, for those of you who haven't seen these scopes, and it's pretty common that most of the libraries have the same scope. It's the Orion Star Blast 2. It's a tabletop 114 millimeter aperture, 450 millimeter focal length. And what they do is they glue in a Celestron zoom eyepiece. So there's no loose eyepieces, there's nothing to swap out. So that's great. Unfortunately, you can only get it up to about 65 power. So, from the idea of I'm going to go look at Jupiter, I'm going to look at Saturn, well, you'll be able to tell that Saturn has rings. And if you know what you're looking for, yeah, you'll be able to see the moons and you'll be able to see a couple of bands, but it's going to be tiny. So it's a good first taste. But if you know somebody who's going to do this, offer to help them. Offer to level set. I happen to have an Orion Skyscanner 100, which is like the little brother to that Star Blast. It's 100 millimeter f4 tabletop. It's not a great scope, but it works fine. And I use it strictly as a loaner. I almost never use it myself. But I loan it out on a regular basis. And have a few eyepieces to go with it, just to let people get a taste. And it works out pretty well. I haven't had anybody who's turned into an astronomy nut as a result. But I've had a few people go, you know, this really isn't for me. Okay, fine, I just saved you $1,500. So if there's nobody else that has something to.
I have something, yeah. Let me get it on the screen here.
It's gonna take it over. I'm done. Thank you for your time and attention.
Can you unshare your,
Microphone.
oh, thanks. Unshare the screen, stop sharing. Okay. So this is the Orion Star Blast, and I bought one of these. The club bought one of these because I thought it would be a great idea for a beginner telescope. It is a, as I said, 457 millimeter focal length. It costs, I don't know, $299, oh, $229. That's crazy. It comes with a red dot finder, a 20 millimeter eyepiece, and a 10 millimeter eyepiece. And Steve Bellavia suggested that the optics were really good on it. So I spent a lot of time playing with it, and the optics are good. It's easy to use, nothing to put on or take. I mean, you have to put eyepieces in. And so I thought it was a great telescope to suggest to people. I have since loaned it to one of our student members, and she's been using that. One thing I guess I did before I loaned it was I was looking at the planets when we could see Jupiter and Saturn, and looking at the moon. And with the included 10 millimeter eyepiece, the highest power I could get was 46 power, and that's without a Barlow, but that's what came with it. And I suddenly realized that this would be a terrific scope if you were under dark skies. You could just put a low power eyepiece, scan the heavens, go up the Milky Way with it. It would knock your socks off. But on Long Island, if you kind of scan around, or if you could find M13, which is nearly impossible, the stars aren't sparkling because it's a light polluted sky. And so what you're seeing is a little disappointing. And I realized that perhaps the thing that most people are going to be interested in seeing are the moon and the planets. So I bought, just for the heck of it, because my theory is I want one of everything. This is the Star Explorer, the 80 millimeter scope. I mean, come on, $229. The beauty of this scope is the focal, it's an f11 scope. The focal length is almost 900 millimeter. So it comes with a 25 millimeter eyepiece, which gives you 34 power, and a 10 millimeter eyepiece, which gives you 87 power, and then a 2 times Barlow. And if you put that underneath the 10 millimeter eyepiece, you get 175 power, which is a little bit too much for a 3-inch scope. But here's what stunned me. The optics on this are astounding. It is a beautiful, I mean, it's an f11 system, but there's not color fringing on the moon. It's long focal length. So even with the eyepieces that come with this, you get really close-up views of the moon, and you get really nice images of Jupiter and Saturn. The other scope, the little Dob, max power was 46x, and this comes up to be twice that at 87. And it kind of changed my whole sense about what I might suggest for somebody as a first scope on the grounds that they're going to be looking at the moon and the planets, and you could look at the Pleiades with it and so on. And of course, it's also star sense. You can see that black thing on the top of it. I'll show you one in a minute. I brought the tube assembly. The telescope is rickety, but I put it, I mean, this is probably stupid. I put it on a really nice mount, Altaz mount, that costs more than the entire scope. But I can't get over how good the quality is. And I think it's rickety on the tripod. I haven't tried their tripod yet, but I think it's probably a better suggestion than the Astroglass. I'm going to take a second to Dave, can we have the brightness up? I guess we don't. I think we don't need to see people in the back, you know, on the screen. This looks good. So this is the telescope, and as you can see, it's a fairly large instrument. It's about 3 feet long. And then this gizmo on the top is the star sense.
Yeah, Ken, you're still sharing your screen.
You're still sharing your PowerPoint.
Okay, hang on. We can do this. I just need one more arm. Oh, thank you. Stop share. And
Now we see you.
let's see, pin. Okay, I can see myself more better. So how, I guess I'm small on the screen at home, right?
You look good.
Okay, so here's the scope. And I think it's a plastic tube. One thing that Steve Bandel mentioned, this is a conventional diagonal on the back end. It's a Svaboni that I bought because this comes with an erecting prism on the back, which soaks up light and ruins the image. So if you buy one of these, you immediately take off the little round ball thingy that goes where this red thing is and put on a conventional diagonal. And Svaboni, I think I got this on Amazon. I think it's about $40 for an 1.25 inch diagonal. So this is the device. I'll take the cover off. So there's a first surface mirror there, and the cell phone goes on top. It goes up here. I won't try and juggle the cell phone, but it goes about here, and the camera looks at the first surface mirror and then shows the sky in the foreground. And as everybody has mentioned, it is an astounding way to find things, especially for beginners. So anyhow, just to give you a sense of this, it's pretty big and the tripod is rickety, but I think it may be a really good way to begin or to suggest to somebody. So I guess if that's it, another round of applause for Ed, first class, first grade talk as always. So thank you all for coming, and I'm going to stop recording, and I'm going to turn this over to Sam for those who like to hang out.